you're listening each week. So it's a 1 hour online show for people to meet, chat, learn, share positive stories, and discuss an aspect of mental health and well-being with the hosts and the star guests. That's kind of the MO of the show if you've not listened before. So, we had a great, fantastic response to last week's show with Sarah Dennis and Danielle Simpson. So thanks for everyone getting involved on that, and for so many positive messages afterwards as well, which I know Tony and Paul really appreciated. So thanks for that. I hope you've all been practicing using the affirmations and they've proved useful, the things that you learned from last week if you did join. We've got another belter of a show lined up this week with another very special guest, Tony.
Thanks so much for stepping in at the last minute, Jack. For folk who maybe don't know your background and the really interesting organisation you're working for, do you want to say a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Well, I've been a motorsport journalist since I came out of university. So what's that, 6 or 7 years now? I work for a company called The Race, which you can find online. We launched in February last year. It's basically a collective of motorsport journalists who are a lot more experienced than me, and some people who are involved in different areas. So things like esports, commentary, YouTube and stuff like that. So not necessarily all written journalists. So the idea is just to basically bring interesting stories to people in whatever way that should be. So whether it's a podcast, a YouTube video, or if it is a written kind of in-depth feature on our website. So yeah, really just kind of, taking a bit of a fresh approach to things and not really, not doing things as they've always been done, trying to find new and different ways and approaching things just with a bit of a fresh mindset, really, to try and create interesting content. So hopefully we've been doing that, and we're on all social media and we've got YouTube and podcasts, so you can check us out if you want to have a look. It's The Race. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at the moment, Tony.
And I gather you've launched a podcast today.
Yeah, we've launched an IndyCar podcast. So my background, I started in rallying, but always been interested in different forms of motorsport. So a lot of single-seater stuff as well. Probably most successful covering kind of Formula 2 and Formula 3. Interesting that, actually. I wish I'd have had the positive pit stop when Antoine Hubert passed away, because he was a good friend of mine, and really struggled through that period of my life when we lost him. There's some things on my kind of bookshelf you might be able to see there. There's a Leon football scarf, because he was a big Leon fan, and we always used to take the mick out of each other to do with football. And there's one of his Renault hats there as well. So I think something like this, this kind of motorsport community where people understand what it's like to lose someone who you've been so close to in motorsport. It impacts your life so much, and it would have been so nice to have that really close-knit group, of people who understand motorsport and understand kind of loss. So it's a shame that wasn't around then, but I'm really glad that it's here now and helping people out each week.
Yeah, and very happy memories of Antoine, I'm sure you have, but also a very sad loss indeed. And Perry, before we go into the show, thanks for joining us this week. Sadly, we had to delay it a couple of weeks, and we passed on our sincere condolences to Johnny Dumfries, his family, and his friends as well. The Positive Pit Stop's all about positivity, but we also talk openly about some life's challenges as well, and that's what we're going to be doing tonight. But we like to have a lot of fun, and having spent a little bit of time with you and read your autobiography as well, I know we're going to have a lot of fun tonight. That's for definite. We're going to look a little bit about, as Jack said, issues around mental health and positivity and how to keep the mind fresh. But hopefully through having a bit of fun and a bit of laughter, we'll also get a few top tips on keeping well. Last week's session with Danielle and Sarah, I've been doing a daily affirmation that I'm going to definitely deadlift 100 kilograms for 5 reps. Progress, managed to do 80 kilograms for 5 reps this week when I actually thought I was doing 70. So that was good. Things are moving on and doing quite well. Those of you new to the show, we like to keep it as interactive as possible. So if you're happy to put your cameras on, we love to see your reactions and your responses. It's great to just see people laughing and smiling and contributing to the show. At the bottom of your screens, I'll type in the chat in a moment once I hand back to Jack. If you have any questions for Perry or for Jack or for myself, or you have any comments during the show, just pop them in the chat, and at an opportune moment, we'll probably invite you on screen to ask the questions yourselves. So over to you, Jack.
Thanks very much. I guess that leads us nicely into introducing Perry properly. But before I start, I'm about to read out some facts. And I think if Paul O'Neill wrote these down, then they're definitely not going to be right. So sorry about that, Perry. And you can definitely correct us if Paul's got his stats wrong. But yeah, we're staying with four wheels this week. And, you know, coming over to Perry, who's raced in multiple formulas, initially funding his racing career by working on North Sea oil rigs. So after Formula One, Perry went on to compete at Le Mans 5 times. Yeah. 2 of those occasions driving for Audi UK. And Perry's best-selling autobiography, Flat Broke, also details his life as the original Stig on Top Gear. So first of all, Perry, it'd be rude to not ask how you're doing this fine evening.
Oh, good. And thanks very much for having me on your show. Hello to everybody out there.
Don't thank me, because it was nothing to do with me. It was all to do with Tony and Paul. But yeah, I mean, you know.
Okay, I'll take it back. Nothing to do with you, Jack. Paul, Tony, thanks a lot. Jack, don't give a stuff about you.
Fair enough. That's how most people think, I think. But yeah, how, you know, it's a difficult time we're living through, I guess. It's kind of a good time to have something like the Positive Pit Stop, because lockdown's been so difficult for so many people. But how have you been coping, and what have you been doing to stay positive through this kind of difficult period?
I tell you what would have made me more positive is looking at your bookcase behind, no sign of Flat Broke, my book. I've looked through it a couple of times, can't see one. And I would say to everybody listening, my book is going really well. We sold another copy just last month.
I thought it was the bookcase was going to be so far away that people wouldn't be able to see what was on the bookcase, and I'd just be able to
see everything. You can see everything. Yeah, like everybody in lockdown, you kind of adjust or try to adjust, etc. And yeah, my thoughts are predominantly a lot more with other people, to be quite honest. You know, I'm lucky that I've got a good amount of space indoors and outside, and I think so much about people in, you know, way more crowded position that are way more compromised, and, you know, just really do think about how they're suffering. But I kind of have got an inbuilt positivity. You know, the older you get, they say that the definition of a pessimist is an optimist with experience, you know. But it's fairly important to always look at where you are fortunate, and I think that's something that I just do naturally. I don't try to do these things. I always think, okay, what's next, and, you know, what's the adventure, and what can I make a difference to, and what's going to entertain me a lot of the time, and keep my interests. But clearly, of course, that's not the same for everybody. But that's what I tend to focus on something. And from the very few things that I'm good at, I'm terribly good at focusing. And I can just absolutely lose myself in a project for a very, very long time. Research really deeply, read a lot, and try and work out the ins and outs of whatever it is that's taken my interest.
Let's try and be a bit more motorsport specific for a couple of minutes, and kind of look back on your life. You know, how did you find motorsport, and how did that sort of early part of your career come about for the people who've not read the book or haven't, you know, heard your story before?
It was a total fluke. I mean, I always used to like cars as a kid, and I could name nearly every car on the street, and I used to like their lines and everything. And I was studying law, economics, and art at college. And I used to keep drawing these cars. And a friend of mine was really into Formula One. And he used to bring these great magazines in called Grand Prix International. And they had really beautiful photographs. And I was so taken with these shots. I used to keep drawing the race cars and keep, you know, then I was reading about these race drivers. And at the same time, you know, my own road driving probably left a little bit to be desired. But it was that speed thing that I kind of, you know, really loved. And so there was a real connection here on thinking, wow. And I started watching it on TV, reading more about it. And in the end, I play a bit of piano. So I was demonstrating one weekend and it had all been set up. I didn't realize, but the guy who owned the shop was great friends with the chief instructor at Brands Hatch. And he brought him down and said, I've heard about you. You're coming with me. So he took me to the track and immediately put me in the Sunbeam Talbot school cars, you know. So, you know, me being absolutely the fastest thing the world has ever seen, took him around and nearly stuffed it about 17 times. This guy must have been nearly 60 when he drove me. I was like 18. He must have been nearly 60. Absolutely blew me away. You know, he was so much better, so much smoother, and talking at the same time. And I was thinking, he's lost his mind. We're going into Paddock Hill Bend. I'm going, he's mental, you know. Whereas I thought I was Jack the Lad. Have a look at this. But then suddenly it kind of clicked. He said, get back in. Now show me what you can do. And that was it. I kind of did. It all fell right. And then he dragged me out of the car, introduced me to John Webb, who owned the circuit, called up Van Diemen, called up the engine people. And that's how the conversation got started. But very, very shortly, I learned from my reading and talking to everybody I could find that I found motor racing cost money. And so that's when I went to work on North Sea oil rigs. And I worked out there for a couple of years to get the money together to actually even start and then come straight in with a team into Formula Ford.
Sounds like you were driving a Brands Hatch a bit like Paul O'Neill in them days.
I wouldn't like to comment on that.
When did it kind of become clear to you that Formula One was going to be a possibility? Because
no, immediately. That's you know what I was saying earlier about now totally unrealistic, and probably on this occasion it was probably great to be so naive, because I said I'm going to be a racing driver and I'm going to be a Formula One driver. I wasn't going out there to just say, oh, I want to go racing. That was the deal. I felt that I could probably do it. And as I say, being massively naive. And then, of course, you learn the lessons quickly. But, you know, I had quite a bit of success early on. In my first 6 races in Formula Ford from coming off the street, I set 3 poles. But nobody was worried about me because I used to smash it into the wall with monotonous regularity, which meant me going back on to the oil rigs to work for a couple of weeks just to pay for the accident damage where I'd been an idiot, you know. But the following year, I got my act together and won the British Championship. So, you know, and then I was kind of thinking, right, you know, if the lifeblood of this is sponsors, I need to get publicity, because if I can get sponsors, I need to show them what I can do and try and get their marketing money. So I kind of, you know, ended up walking around industrial estates much more than going around in circles on the track, walking around industrial estates, knocking on doors, chatting people up, just trying to say, look, this is what I'm doing. You can be on the side of the car. We can entertain your people. And we, you know, all this kind of stuff, just to get any kind of backing, just to continue. So that's how it all kicked off. But it was, you know, it took quite a lot of work.
I think your story is so interesting because it's, you know, nothing was handed to you on a plate, and you had to work for absolutely everything you got, and you had to earn every opportunity that you know presented itself. You know, nothing handed to you. So I guess, you know, you've got the benefit now of kind of you know, looking back, and I'm sure you've kind of had time to reflect on things a little bit more. And I think it's quite an interesting kind of topic for the Positive Pit Stop. But, you know, is there anything you changed kind of looking back on your career? Is there anything that you know, you've got the benefit of hindsight now? Is there anything you kind of look back on?
Yeah, I would have completely changed how I went about this. I would have gone straight into the city and become a financial trader and forget motor racing.
No, I hope that's not the case, because we wouldn't be here with you now.
Yeah, but it was, I guess it's probably like anybody who starts, you know, getting a few years behind them, is that you go, geez, I did that so badly, and I did that incorrectly, and there was this race where my approach was totally wrong, and that's, you know, loads and loads of things. I also look back and think, well, okay, you know, you gave it everything, and, you know, the walking around the industrial estates, making the phone calls, sending out the proposals all the time. But I do remember there was a friend of mine, she was a girl called Michelle, and I'd written out this sponsorship presentation, which was quite a few pages, yeah. And this was to be mailed out to all these different people. And we did about 35 copies, all stapled together, put them in the envelopes and sending them out. And it was only about a week later I realized that it was her fault, I'm afraid to say, but she spelt sponsorship wrong on every single proposal. So that looks professional. So it's just little things like that. But then you look and think, okay, you know, maybe some of the times how people saw me maybe I was my own worst enemy sometimes. You know, I was the boy in the bar until late and all this kind of stuff. And probably that's, I could have calmed down on some of my, wilder activities, if you like.
There's I think there's a lot of drivers out there now who complain that motorsport's expensive, and you know they wouldn't be the ones knocking on the door on the industrial estates and putting that extra work in. So I think that's a really important part of your career to kind of highlight, because you know it is so important.
I'll guarantee you, Jack, is that there's two things here. I worked and worked and worked and worked and worked. Okay. But even after all that work, I still got lucky because I did find a huge sponsor to take me into Formula 3. And that's where I believe I started driving a lot better and, you know, getting the whole act together about how to go about things and calm down a little bit on certain things, etc. So, yeah, even that there and then was a bit of good fortune. Everybody says you can make your own fortune. I agree with that to a degree. You can just keep working. But unless that bit of fortune had ever come, then there would have been no step up. And you can really itemize I'm not unique in that. You can look at any race driver or anybody in any career and just say, and then I met, you know, and he liked me or she liked me and just gave me that chance. But the thing about chance and opportunities that I am good at is I tear them to shreds. You know, it's like once I get a grip on an opportunity, I do not let go. And I'm actually still exactly the same. So I'm no longer a racing driver, but I guarantee you I still am up here on how I go about everything. But I guarantee you there is that indefinable thing called a little bit of luck sometimes, you know, because none of us ever make it solely on our own. We don't. You need somebody to think he's fairly cute. We're going to give him a shot. Brilliant. You might be chatting them up about it quite a bit, but you finally need somebody to say yes. You know,
it sounds like Tony trying to get me to step in tonight, to be honest, to do this thing. But yeah, before we hand back to Tony, let's do a little question for you that's going to be quite difficult, I think, unless you've got this prepared in your head and you're an absolute pro. But what kind of, is there a race we can look back on or a moment in your career that we can transport back to now, that one moment that you really look back on with great satisfaction now? And that can be, you know, racing career or afterwards. But what would you kind of pick out as that moment?
None.
No? You must have one.
No, it's all right. I just thought I'd end it quick. No, honest to God, there's loads and loads of little things, but also on a balance, there's loads and loads of other things where you just, for God's sake, you know, just at that moment the engine switched off, or just at that moment leading this, that went wrong, or just at that moment. But on the upside, yeah, there's loads of stuff where you think, wow, yeah, that was against the odds, and you do allow yourself a little smile. I've always been about, even if I've, you know, been on pole or something like that, yeah, sure, there's that moment, just go, oh yeah, that's great. But that for me is kind of fairly short-lived, because then you start thinking, okay, what do we need to go faster? If I did make any mistakes, where were they? How can I concentrate on that? How can I get the team together and, you know, and do what we have the very best with? But I got a lot of great memories of Formula 3, a lot of bad memories of F3 as well, because there were so many races I was leading where the car broke. You know, and you can't win a championship against that, especially against Johnny, you know, Johnny Herbert or Damon, you know. And so that was very frustrating in F3. Formula 3000, I loved that formula. Absolutely loved it. Those cars were just mega. Now, you know, we had no money to test. You know, we sometimes borrowed tires or even fuel from other teams. I had a lot of support in the pit lane, where other teams were secretly giving me a set of tires or secretly giving me some fuel just so that I could be out there. And we managed to do some things in F3000, which were pretty good, actually. And then America was really good for me. So that was fantastic, because we were a tiny little team against the Works Jaguar and the Works Toyota and the Works Porsche and the Works Nissan team. And these teams were spending, you know, $10-15 million a year, and we were running on like $250,000. But I'd put it on pole quite a bit, lead quite a bit, but sadly we didn't finish very often, because the poor old girl would say, "I've had enough," and that's it. break, you know. But it was those kind of performances that I knew I was kind of being looked at for F1. I knew that even in F3 and F3000, but it never kind of happened. And this was like thinking, this is my big shot. I've got to do something that's not good. I've got to do something that's special. And I was very, very fortunate indeed. Again, going back to that thing saying about people who believe in you, is that I had a lot of the UK motorsport journalists that were really very, very much on my side. So even though I was racing in America, they would make quite a big deal of it in Autosport and Motoring News, etc., especially David Tremaine and Joe Saywood and a few of the other people. And that was instrumental in keeping, you know, eyes in F1 on me, just really for the speed. And that's really how I got into Formula One, because I certainly, you know, don't underrate the help and the support that I had from many still in the UK at that time.
Well, Tony, let's cross to you. That's enough of my terrible questions. Good job I don't do it for a living, isn't it, every day? Let's get some proper questions from the chat and give Perry a proper grilling here.
Help if I unmuted myself talking about...
Yeah, that usually helps.
Yeah. I don't know, Perry, whether you can see Chris Hosey's background. A number of our regulars do put a lot of time and effort into making sure they have the right photos up for guests. Chris, how old are you in that photo with Perry?
I don't know. Well, I think that photo was taken in 2010, which was in support. I think that was at the British GT at Knock Hill, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it could be. I've still got that jacket, actually, Chris.
Oh, yeah. And I believe, I think I remember that event quite well because Josh Hill was in the team.
Yeah, I can see him in the photo behind you.
Yeah, and a certain young Scott Pye, I believe, who's a bit of a big shot in V8 supercars now, isn't he? And he was actually being coached by you as well, wasn't he, Perry?
Yeah, he's competing in V8 supercars. So, but Josh has since left motor racing, unfortunately. He's going to have to play guitar or something like that.
Ah, that's a reasonable pastime.
Okay, so you was at Knock Hill.
Yeah, that was at Knock Hill, and that was in, I think, the British Formula Ford, and at the same time there was the GTs there.
Right.
I can't for the life of me remember what other supports series were there, but probably the Mini Coopers and the Legends that we have up at Knock Hill. Knowing what it was like back then.
It's an amazing track, isn't it?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I've been around there several times in like production cars as a passenger, though.
Oh, really?
I may have a provisional, but I haven't passed the test yet, so it's
well,
much simpler.
We may be speaking to a future champion, Chris.
Oh yeah. No, I wouldn't mind that, but I'm not really that I'm not really that educated on the economic side of things.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Harry's still learning.
Exactly. Never stop. Never stop.
Right, we've got to come back to Chris for our weekly quiz. So I'll stick you on mute for now, Chris, but thanks for that. And there's a really good question in from Richard Hoyt. Would you like to ask the question, Richard?
Yeah, Perry, hi.
Hi, Richard.
We mentioned right at the start, obviously, about the sad passing of Johnny, who I know was very close to you, and guys like Derek Warwick, Mark Blundell, and people like that. Unfortunately, you must be quite close to a lot of drivers who are sadly no longer with us. How did you deal with that mentally, both as a person and as a racer? Obviously, when someone loses their life racing whilst you're still racing, what effect does it have on you? Because it must be very difficult.
So you're not talking about Johnny within this answer, yeah?
Just over the years, even people who have been seriously hurt, like Martin Donnelly, for example, people like that. How does it affect you as a racer? Because it must be very hard.
It doesn't affect me as a racing driver, but it affects me as a bloke, because as you were kind enough to recognise, I'm close friends with a lot of these guys. And I was in America when Martin got so badly hurt, and Damon got on the phone straight away, and I flew back immediately to get to the London hospital. And Derek was there and told me that, He was in a state. Sorry, Damon told me he was in a real state, and he was. He really was. So that was bad. So I would go in to see Martin, every other day, check on his progress, because he was in London hospital, and I'm, not so far from that. And I was all of a sudden, there was one day when I was there, and Diane, who he was married to at the time, came out and said, "Perry has woken his eyes, he wants to see you." So I went in, and he was speaking very hoarsely, because he'd had a tube down his throat, and he looked like death, he really did. I mean, at the best of times, he's not Brad Pitt, you know what I mean? But he looked like death, and he said, "Pal." I said, "Marty." He said, "Pal, come here." So I went up, and then he whispered something to me, which absolutely could I never say to people I don't know and on air. But he called me something which I can't repeat. And I thought, great, he's going to be all right. But it was pretty bad, but that's mates. But it was the same with Johnny, because Johnny Herbert and I were actually neighbors. All the way through our career, we lived about 1 mile away from each other. So we saw each other, even though we're racing wheel to wheel every weekend, we saw each other every day, every other day as mates. And then when John got so badly hurt at Brands Hatch, again, that was terrible. And I managed to get to the hospital on the same evening, because I was up north racing at Alton Park. And, we were just wondering if Johnny was ever going to walk again, let alone drive. That's the long answer to your question, that as a racing driver, I'm afraid, sorry, it has zero impact on me. But as a friend and as a bloke, these things hurt me very badly. I do separate the two, and I can't stand to see my friends suffering. I don't like to see anybody suffering, and I completely understand loss. And then a great friend of mine, Pete Rogers, was actually killed many years ago in Formula Ford, and then some other friends killed, and that's the loss. It's the human loss. But as a race driver, I'm afraid, I hope it doesn't sound callous, but I probably wouldn't be able to do my job if it had affected me any other way. I think the boys in the 60s and 70s must have been exactly the same. They would mourn the loss on a human level, but then close the visor and get back in, and it's your turn,
Just to add to that, I mean, I actually run my own motorsport page, and I've done some live interviews with one was with Derek Warwick, and we discussed about Martin. The other was with Marianne Andretti, and we discussed about Ronnie Peterson, and they both backed up what you've just said. There's like Derek actually, because obviously he lost his brother as well.
That was terrible. And I was at the funeral for Paul, and I was in, like many others, we were just in pieces, and mourning not just Paul, but mourning Derek's loss as well. Yeah. Because Derek's a great guy. Yeah.
And he said that his proudest moment as a racer was, I think it was the following day after Martin's accident. And he went round the corner where Martin had his crash, and he just went flat. And he said there was no fear. And he said he just locked
compartmentalized
his human feelings in his safe at the back of his head.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if that was just Derek, or if it was, like racing drivers as a breed. It's a kind of thing that you almost learn to deal with. And
let me give you the black and white. Here's the black and white facts of life. Okay, so you're Derek, yeah. You're going through that corner. You start thinking about Martin, yeah, and you think, oh god. I can tell you how you'll know. Look, ready? Stopwatch. You'll be slower, and if you're slower because of that, you might as well not go out there. Yeah, and it's actually also, it's possibly even more dangerous to have your mind on something else as you're going through. So I beg your pardon for interrupting, but that's what Derek was getting to. It's like, bang, you're in, zone it out, deal done.
And thanks, Richard, for a really interesting question, and thanks, Perry, for such an honest answer. And really, actually, to follow on with that, in your own words, to forge a career in motor racing, you need to be the biggest optimist in the world. But what other elements are essential in the psychological makeup of a good racer?
I think that, you know, that there's the things that you would expect, the levels of determination. I think that, you know, if one were to look at the potential attributes that people think of as a race driver as, let's say, bravery or this or whatever, I would actually probably put judgment up there. It's very important to be able to feel what's happening and decipher that in very, very small moments of time. And also to have a good memory, because it's no good forgetting everything you've just learned at this corner if by the time you come back to it, you've kind of forgotten it. So you need to develop that rhythm and that feel to just say, yeah, I need to push a little bit harder, or I need to come back a little bit, or what are the tires giving me this lap? And just to keep reacting, like everybody talks about race driver reactions because they think, oh, race driver reactions, somebody spun in front of you and you're on the brakes. For me, I wouldn't explain it like that. Is that it's infinitesimal. I'm going to say something different. It's very small fractions, very small fractions all the time throughout the braking, throughout the turning, throughout the corner, that you're constantly reacting, whether it be slightly on the steering wheel, on the throttle, possibly on the brake, whatever the score is, but you're feeling it, and it's levels of confidence and commitment. Then, of course, you really need to hopefully have a relationship with the team where they can decipher what you're saying or feeling to try to make the right decisions to go faster. Because, again, I'm not unique in this. I've jumped in something, gone everything that I can give, and you keep coming out with a time that lap, and you're within 0.2, 0.3 of a second or 0.1 of a second of 4 laps in a row. So you've kind of bottomed out. So you then need to make the right decisions on saying, can I make the car go faster or give me more grip without causing more drag? And then going out and not completely driving the same way. You just go, have I got more grip? And now you do something ever so slightly different because of that. And that reflects in the lap time. So there's a certain level of, there is a cerebral approach to it to a degree, especially how the cars get more sophisticated. And I mean, where the boys are now and the data that they have to live with, deliver, interpret all the time, you know, crikey, I'm not sure that that's my cup of tea to that level, but it's what they've grown up with. You know, I am kind of more blood and guts as a driver, but even when I was doing it a lot, even finishing with Audi, you know, we had a lot of data, a lot of tracing, a lot of overlays, all this kind of stuff. And yeah, I had to be involved with it, but it wasn't my favorite side, you know. I preferred sitting down with the engineer rather than all this computer stuff.
So just mentioning data, I read a few chapters of your autobiography again today, just to remind.
So you mean Flat Out, Flat Broke?
Flat Out, Flat Broke, available from Perry McCarthy, I believe.
Is that the book that's available on Amazon Kindle? Just download for £3.50.
Oh, well, what a bargain! It's a great read.
That's the one.
It really is a great read. And just talking about data and driving on the limit. So I believe, was it a test with Benetton, was it? Where a certain Michael Schumacher told you that he was taking a corner at 170 miles an hour.
No. Michael said, because it was difficult to really know because Michael's time had been set on quali tyres and also light tanks. And I was going around doing some development work for Benetton. So I'm just chewing the fat with Michael. And I just said, how are you taking bridge? He said, flat. I went, really? So he went, yeah. Now I've come away thinking, you're having a laugh. I mean, I know you're brilliant, mate, but no, you can't. Are you taking bridge flat? This is what's going on. You're taking bridge flat out, which means flat means no lift. So there's no troweling, no braking, it's flat. Now, I'd come up to bridge quite a few times and I was already scaring the daylights out of myself a couple of times with like a lift and a tiny bit of brake and then turn in. And the car's already going, you know? So I went back out and I thought, okay, monkey boy, that's why you're not Michael Schumacher, isn't it? That's why you're where you are. You need to take it flat, take it flat, take it flat. So I've come up to the corner flat out in the Benetton, and I've just absolutely willed myself to keep my foot in. And I actually jammed my hip down so I couldn't lift my foot, you know? And I turned in. And as soon as I turned in, I realized it was wrong. The car went everywhere. And I'm not kidding you. To get it back, my hands were moving faster than Bruce Lee in a Kung Fu film, you know? It was like all this kind of stuff, just all that. And I'm sitting in there going, now, I probably did everything right to get it back. But there was somebody up there saying, there you go, son, we're going to put you right, because I got away with that. So there was so much luck there because I'd gone so close to the wall, coming around everything else. Anyway, I thought, I'm not going to tell Pat Simmons, who was the engineer at the time. So I came in. I said, okay. He said, what do you want? So I said, Pat, can you do a tire pressure test? Something's got to be wrong. Michael's taking it flat, you know? So all of a sudden, he spent about 5 minutes. He came out and leant down by the car and he said, did you have a little moment out there, son? So I said, no. He said, well, that's funny. He said, because on our trace, we've got you on full opposite lock, 180 miles an hour, right? So I've gone, all right, Pat, well, Michael told me he could take it flat. He said, yes, you rock ape, on qualifying tyres with no fuel. He said, you're on used race tyres with half a tank of fuel. And I thought, yes, that is the rock ape you are. but I was kind of competitive, you know, because I couldn't just see how Michael could just do this kind of stuff. And it kind of validated my position to turn around and say, you've got to trust what you're feeling, you know? But It was a stupid way to go about it.
It's fair to say you had a few run-ins with team bosses over the years, because obviously personalities can clash at times. But as a racing driver, you kind of have to have that selfish mentality, surely, to you want everything that's right for you. So how, in terms of being a good team player in motorsport, because there's a lot of team work going on. How do you balance being a good team player with making sure that the car's right for you and you have the best chance of winning a race?
I think it's fair to say that the only time one has to really, in my opinion, one has to consider being a team player is when you're sharing the car, such as sports car racing. So when you're with, Panos, Lotus, or Audi, or Chrysler, or whatever, there has to be some consideration with those who you're working for and with, because somebody else is going to get in that seat, and you're there together. And it's it's kind of polite not to smash the thing to pieces before they get in the car, So I think that's the team player thing coming through. It's quite funny that people always talk in terms of a team and a teammate, but actually most of the time your teammate is actually your worst enemy in motor racing, because they're perceived to have the same car, the same engine, the same tires, the same team around them, so the same opportunity. So actually the most important person to dust in that field is your teammate. That's the main thing. I think that actually for me personally, I think I was way too reasonable on quite a few things. Where I would fall out with somebody is if they said something stupid, and I'm not really built to comply in that way. Shall we put it that way?
Which is actually a perfect time to hand over to Jack, talking about saying things stupid, for a quick get to know Perry quiz.
Oh, that was a bit mean, Tony. Jeez.
Yeah, that's a nice handover, Jack, wasn't it?
Perfectly.
No. Well, this is get to know Perry time for everyone. So we've got some questions for you. But Paul O'Neill's first question is, what is the PIN number to your credit card? So I don't know if you want to answer that one, or if you just want to skip over that one. Maybe it's probably a good idea.
Tell him by chance it's exactly the same as his.
Excellent. What is your favourite food, Perry?
Oh, do you know what? I just thought of a better answer to that.
Go on. Give me the better answer.
Tell him it's his wife's birthday.
Oh, he won't like that one.
No, tell him that. That's great.
I think he might have one of those disagreements you were just talking about with you if I tell him that one.
Bring it on.
Yeah, let's do favorite food and favorite drink as well, if you want to chuck that one in.
It's funny about the favorite food. I probably, East End boy, so I'm always thinking probably bacon, egg, tomatoes, and mushrooms.
Classic.
But I would say my taste is a little more ranging than that. But the funny thing is, as soon as I'm asked favorite food, I totally revert to type and go, yeah, bacon, egg, tomatoes, mushrooms, beans, slice of toast, cup of tea. That'd be great.
Not very stereotypical racing driver, but we'll allow it, I guess.
Yeah, well, I'm not into pasta.
No,
and that's what we used to somehow have to eat because of carbo loading before a race and stuff. So, yuck.
What about favourite driver, past or present? You pick anyone you like.
Oh, different ones for different reasons, really. Again, instant one that comes to my mind, James Hunt. But others that instantly come to mind, Gilles Villeneuve, because when I got into F1, it was exactly 10 years after Gilles had been killed. And so I dedicated my colour scheme to him and kept those for years. But there's all different drivers for different types. I guess I told Alan Jones a while back, he was probably one of the main people that actually brought me into motor racing. And same with Keke, is that watching those guys and just thinking, wow, but I guess it was Jonesy I really liked. He's a bit of a bloke's bloke, no holds barred, none given, that kind of approach. Same with Jody Scheckter. And it's one of the joys to me was meeting so many of these guys, along my career and later in life. And I'd have a chat to them about what they meant to me at that time as somebody who was about to come into the sport and wanted to come through. And, you do this and you don't realize maybe it's not, that they were world champions. Maybe they sometimes don't realize the impression that they're making on so many other people. But again, Scheckter, rough, tough bloke, get out there and stuff. But of course you go back, Nicky I just thought was just fantastic. I loved his sense of humor. Just lots and lots of different ones. Ayrton, everybody would expect me to turn around and say Ayrton. Well, we were, if you look at a school year, Ayrton to me and Damon and Johnny and the rest he was like a couple of years ahead of us as a school year. But we had to fight for a little bit longer to get into F1. But he was somebody that we all knew from very early days. He seems quite good.
I thought you were going to say yourself.
Oh yeah.
You've got to back yourself when you get to your level, haven't you? Really, you've got to have that kind of mentality that you're, the best to ever do it, and
I just think that sometimes there's bravado and there's maybe a slightly considered approach. And if you listen to Damon speak, Damon's certainly not one of those people. Damon's confident, and he always was. And he's got a mind like a steel trap. He can take a lot of pressure. I'm terribly fond of Damon. We go back a long way and we're great friends. But Damon's highly competitive and he won't like to lose. But he's still, quite rightly so, on TV talks about Michael, Schumacher as being, somebody, talks about Ayrton, and he talks about it from a position that he portrays it that he's not as good as them. So Damon on his day was a match for anybody, but that's how he's a highly intelligent guy, and he thinks there were other people better. For me personally, I think that there were so many people better than me at so many different bits and bobs. I think that on my day, on certain areas, it'd be very difficult for anybody to beat me. But as an all-round package, God only knows, because I just didn't do enough. So I can't sit here and say, if I had been in the Williams, I would have won the world championship. I may have blown it. I may have smashed it up every race, or may have not got on with it. I just don't know. But certain components were definitely there, because by the time I got to F1, I'd raced against half the grid and beaten them. But, you just have to be intelligent about this and say, you're definitely good enough to get better. And that's the only thing that one can pursue, really. And enjoy it.
It's a brilliant approach to take, I think, and I think everyone will respect you being so honest about that. So thank you for that. But I
meant to say I'm the best of all time, obviously, but
What about, you've done so many amazing events of varying different descriptions now across the world. What would be your favorite circuit that you've competed on over your career?
Oh, do you know one I just didn't get to do properly because I did 3 laps, was Monaco.
Amazing.
Now, that's got me written all over it because I used to really love the street circuits in the States, and they work very well for me indeed. I really like Le Mans. The one that we'd probably all say is Spa-Francorchamps, the Belgian Grand Prix, because that's so beautiful. You're in a car and you've got these undulations and you come up to great scenery, and there's a presence about it. If you just allow yourself a half a second to take it all in, you think, wow, lucky boy. And it's rather the same at Le Mans, when the sun's going down or the sun's coming up and you're doing 220 miles an hour and it's bang like that. But if you just allow yourself for a moment to say, this is why I'm doing this, okay, team leader, and then you kind of get back on with it, right? But there were many circuits in America, again, because one of the things I liked about those circuits, and this can get political and everybody can have their own opinion about this, and especially from losing Antoine, your friend, just a little while back, I'm from a safe circuit, but I don't like circuits that are over sanitized. I've got a pathological hatred of too many chicanes all the time. I don't like runoff areas where you need to refuel to actually get to the wall. It's like there's just kind of, it really should be about, this corner's flat, and you've got your heart smacking through your chest on the consequences, because that does separate people. And I think that circuits can separate drivers and driver approaches as well. So, but of course, the argument against it is that, we're trying not to have people smashed to pieces or killed. So I've got that, but it's just a personal preference. When I was doing all this, I preferred the more raw circuits and fast ones and really high speed corners, thinking, whoa, every time you came up to it, you're going, get this right and get this right now, And that's, but that's why I came into this game, because of the noise of our engines, the spectacle, the sheer speed, and can I do it? And I think that's the underlying thing that, for me personally, I had as motor racing as a career, because it didn't just take what I had, it took everything that I had and still demanded more. And I liked that chase, that kind of challenge, trying to say, I do think, I've no idea why, I probably did have quite an awful lot of natural ability, but still, you can't just live off that. It's about work to give yourself that chance to be better, and use whatever you've got in a better way. But I'm not driving by numbers, it's just, I very rarely had breaking points. It was all about where I kind of thought, and that was it.
So let's imagine we're on one of those favorite circuits then. What would be the ideal car to take there? What would be the one that you would go back and jump in?
What, going back?
Well, you can say now if you want. Just your favorite race car, really. What give us a flavour of what that would be?
My favorite race car. Again, it becomes more of a visual thing with me about the style of some of these cars. And I always really liked the Lions of Ayrton and Gerhard's Mclarens in the late 80s. I thought they were really pretty cars. And yeah, I like those. I remember the Warsteiner Arrows in that gold color. I always used to think they looked really cool. I mean, they were slow. The natural answer would be you want the fastest possible car. But then you see things like, Gilles' was it the 312 or 512?
312,
yeah. So you look at that and think, wow, at the angle Gilles was at, something that slides, even though it shouldn't have been because it had ground effects and skirts, but something that moved and slid. And I used to really like that. So I'm sorry, it's because I've got a range of passion for different reasons. Same answer as with the drivers, same answer as with the circuits. It's going to be exactly the same with the cars, anything that didn't require a degree in computer science to drive, yeah. You know, the stuff at the moment, their steering wheels are like a PlayStation. You know, God bless all the drivers and how quick their minds can work, and that they're taking this as second nature. Stuff that. I don't want to know about all that. Yeah, just give me lovely big engine, big fat tires, skinny wings, and let's go. I'm just not into that. That's work. I wanted to just drive these things and race, you know. I'll tell you what I missed out on, Jack. What I really, really wished I'd raced in. Clearly, of course, I wish my F1 career had been a bit bloody better. Just a little bit, you know, because that was a nightmare with the on-your-own motor team. But I wished I'd raced in Can-Am, you know, because those things were just sheer, unbelievable brutes of cars. And, you know, when you watch people like Donahue and Rosberg, you know, all those people driving these cars, and you think, yeah, I would have loved that, you know?
Brilliant, brilliant. I guess kind of moving away from racing a little bit, I guess you're kind of also very well known for being the original Stig on Top Gear. So you must have told this story a few times, but how did that all come about, and how did that happen?
Well, funny enough, it was actually at the launch of my book, Flat Out, Flat Broke, now $7.99, published by Haynes, available in a good bookshop near you. Thank you.
I think I'm going to start putting money into your F1 career. You're that persuasive when it comes to the book.
It's I tell you what, we got a 5-star review the other day. Arrived in good condition. It's incredible. But no, it was actually, we had a great big party for the launch of the book because I was riding for Audi back then, and Audi were terribly supportive on anything that was fun. You know, Audi were great. I adored racing for Audi. I really did. And my great friend Richard Lloyd, who sadly passed away, you know, and John Wickham. Don't know if John's tuning in at the moment, but again, 2 other people that go, we want you, we believe in you. And as soon as that was happening to me, I felt brilliant. You know, that was great. Going around the houses. So it was at the book launch. Jeremy was there, Jeremy Clarkson, and also Andy Willman, because I'd known Jeremy for years anyway. And it was there that they said, we want to have a chat with you. We're going to be bringing Top Gear back on air, because back in 2002, it had been off air for quite a long time. And then they said, like, we've got this idea for a secret racing driver who doesn't speak. And you're going to be dressed in black shoes, black overalls, black gloves, black crash helmet, black visor. And we're going to call you the Gimp. And I said, no, you're not. And they said, yeah. And I said, no, that's not going to happen. So that went backward and forward. And then finally they turned around and said, okay, the Stig. And I went, that's fine. But they said, why not the Gimp? I said, look, trust me, I've been in motor racing a long time. Everything comes out. Now, I don't want to be walking down the street at like 55 years old and some woman passes me and goes, Gimp, you know? Yeah, if they turn around and go, hey, Stig, that sometimes it happens. You go, hey, how you doing? You know? But like, Gimp, you're going to start looking over your shoulder, aren't you? Because, you know, that's...
I'm glad you argued that one.
Yeah, so that didn't happen. But yeah, actually, it was really funny when we did the deal. I sat down and they said, you mustn't tell anybody. I said, well, I'm not going to. And they said, you can't tell your wife. I said, well, no, I'm going to have to tell the wife. So they said, why? So I said, well, I've got to tell the wife. So they said, you can't. I said, no, trust me, I've got to tell the wife. So they said, why? So I said, okay, mate, you try sneaking out the house 6 o'clock in the morning, just from head to foot in black leather, saying I should be back at 12 tonight, but don't worry, darling. She said, yep, see what you're saying. You tell the wife.
I just have to share a comment in the chat around that. Jim messaged me to say, for a bloke who spent 2 years being silent, you don't half talk well.
Well, actually, it was Richard Hammond. He always said, we're so proud we've taken the mouthiest driver in motor racing and found a way to shut him up. I said, don't worry about that, sunshine. We've taken the smallest TV presenter we can get, put you in a jet car, and made you even shorter.
Yeah, that didn't end very well, did it?
Well, thank God it did. Thank God it did.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. What were, speaking along those kind of lines, what were your highlights of working on the show? And Paul's also asked, who is the biggest pain in the arse to work with?
Tara Palmer-Tompkinson on that one. God rest her soul, but she was a nightmare. I don't know what was going on with Tara that weekend, but trust me, it's the first time we ever had to lock the car up in case it followed the white line round the track on its own. So that should give you a rough idea. Yeah. But no, Tara was a pain. She wouldn't listen. But I used to, because I'm kind of used to driving quick stuff and driving as fast as I can go, that was kind of like normal for me, really. But I did kind of enjoy instructing some of the celebrities on the start and reasonably priced car stuff. And I knew a few of them anyway. So, they kind of guessed it was me. So always, they were terribly good to their word. They never let on. But that was nice, meeting some great people like, Jamie Oliver is somebody I'm particularly fond of. I think he's an incredible guy. I really do. And then, Michael Gambon, he was a great guy. There were loads of Anne Robinson. She was fun. And Jodie Kidd. And Jodie always blames me for us being together on track and spending time there, for her coming to motor racing, And we still keep in touch because Jodie's a super girl and very accomplished and really good driver. She was so good on the show,
I guess
so that was my favorite bit.
Yeah, I guess it's interesting kind of thinking back to, when you think about Top Gear and the Stig now, you just kind of think, that must have been a really cool job to do, but you don't necessarily think about all the guests you must have got to meet and all the, the interesting people. So that must have been fantastic. But yeah, that
was interesting. Yeah. But I mean, it's great that everybody thinks the Stiggy job's great. And there were some good fun bits around it, but I'm a racing driver and I like going against people. That's, so I'm kind of always against myself, thinking, can I go faster, push a little bit harder, find where the grip is, etc. But there's nothing like taking people on or them trying to overtake you trying to overtake them. So for me, it wasn't the same as motor racing. But, you do your job and you take something out of sheer personal pride. I pushed everything to any ability that I've got anyway.
Just to jump in, because we've got another question that's coming through the chat directly from Shaz, and it's on that subject. And Shaz's question is, as the Stig, which car did you drive for Top Gear that gave you the biggest thrill?
Yeah, I've just remembered, actually. It was the, and he's going to be a bit surprised on why. It was the Pagani Zonda. Yeah, because so stay with me a second, guys. The Pagani was, as you'd expect of something that costs £1 million, double lively. I could use the torque on the throttle to actually steer the car. So it was a real handful, and that was fantastic. However, so you can imagine all that power, that is on tap around the track, and you're trying to go as fast as you can. Now, add this bit in. That, what do you call it? The steering lock mechanism where you can raise the steering wheel up and down. Yeah. And also for comfort, pull it towards you or put it back. But you've got a bracket, haven't you? Where you do that in most road cars, yeah?
Yeah.
Where it's for comfort, right? Well, they've got the car there and that had broken.
Oh, God.
You getting there? So now I'm going around the track in this thing that's £1 million, massive speed. They've wetted the track. I won't bore you with the details, but they've put water all over the track. I'm going around in this thing now, flat out, and if I can show you this properly, steering while the steering wheel's coming in and out and going up and down and trying to judge what the hell I'm doing. And that was a wild ride. Inside the car, I was going, whoa! So that stands out. Yeah.
Sounds like the Mercedes inspiration for Das.
I knew he was going to say that. Yeah. We gave him the idea, but it's just that this didn't do anything except alter my own ride height.
Brilliant. Tony, do you reckon that's a good time to go over to the quiz?
So, is that the first question of the quiz? It's a good time to go over to the quiz, yeah?
The answer's no.
So I'm going to hand over to Chris to host our weekly quiz. It's known as the Crap Quick Quiz. and it is pretty crap, and it is very quick. So over to you, Chris.
Oh, well, thanks for that, Tony. Now, here's basically this week's theme, because obviously you're here, Perry. It's called Perry or Ferry, is the theme of this quiz. And it's questions to yourself, Perry McCarthy, and of course, it was meant to be also for Paul O'Neill, but obviously he's not here. Jack Benion's now in the hot seat. Obviously, Tony could be, but he's the one who comes up with this stuff, and I'm the one who has to ask the questions. So that lets me out as well. Basically, it's about 5 questions, and you can shout the answers out if you get them, and you get a point if you get each of them right.
Can I just interrupt a second? Am I playing, or is it about me or something? Or
no, it's sort of general questions, but you can play along as yourself. Obviously, it's just sort of questions. Yeah. Right. So, question 1. Let me just get this right. Who wrote that? Question 1. Who wrote that if you met Perry, he will first ask you how much money you have on you, and then how much you can get. Now, the real question to that is, was it Mark Blundell or Damon Hill? On you go, Perry.
No, I mustn't answer that, because I do know it, but...
No, you don't. You can shout out. You can answer if you want.
Okay, it was Damon.
You're correct. It was Damon Hill. 1 point to you.
Tony, you should have got that.
1 champion. Right, now the second question, now this is a bit sort of pop culture. Which band reached #1 with Ferry Cross the Mersey?
Jerry and the Pacemakers.
Well done, you got that. That's correct, Jerry and the Pacemakers. Question 3. Now this one, I will admit, is a bit easy, but I'll say it anyway. What is the seasoning called that is used by Nando's to make their chicken spicy?
Coriander?
Perry, are you there? Perry.
Can you hear me?
That's the answer.
What was your answer, Jack? Sorry?
Perry.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Well done, Jack.
Almost a tiebreaker at this point, so that brings us on to question 4. Which actor called Perry played Chandler in the hit television comedy Friends?
Matthew.
Yeah.
You're correct, Jack. It was Matthew Perry. So that's 2-all. So this is the final one. It's the tiebreaker here.
Excuse me a second. Jack, have you got a leak in your bathroom or something? Is there's something coming down the wall behind you? Jack, there's something coming down the wall behind you. Quick, ask the question. Quick.
And finally, who is the lead singer of Roxy Music?
Brian Ferry.
You're correct.
I just wanted to make sure Jack felt he was in the game. Okay, that's why I let those other 2 fly.
You've just Michael Schumachered me there and told me to take bridge flat.
That's 3 to Perry McCarthy and 2 to Jack Benion there. Tony, I believe it's over to you.
Thanks, Chris. I think that was a bit of a fix, because you did say last week you were really excited about Perry coming on the programme, and lo and behold, the first time ever, the actual guest has won the quiz. But good job, fella, and thanks for that.
I've made history.
You have. That actually, Chris has actually won the most quizzes over the course of the Positive Pit Stop so far. That's why we've made him the quiz.
That's not something I'm deeply proud of, but
that's been a fantastic session, Perry. Don't want to take up too much more of your time, but there are 1 or 2 other little questions that I think would be great.
Sorry, Tony, you're still sending the money over, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. Well,
okay.
To be honest, the sales of Flat Broke are going to go through the roof after this is put up on the YouTube channel. I'm surprised Paul O'Neill hasn't just come in for the glory 5 minutes. Jim Purvis, I think, has had to... Oh, no, you're there, Jim. You had a question that you asked about nearly an hour ago. I'll put you on speaker, Jim.
Hi, Perry. Really has been fantastic. I've been laughing my head off here.
Hi, Jim.
I think the question that I put to Tony was at the beginning, what was Clarkson like to work with?
Jeremy as a driver is a great journalist. I'm actually I'm a huge fan of Jeremy's professionally, because I think that he's a fantastic writer, and his ability to create similes and metaphors all the time from out the blue. He comes at something from a real different angle, and it's highly intelligent. And it just, his way of presenting, it's got so many unique attributes. And of course, that's made him the absolute star that he is. But he's not to be underappreciated. Look, I know he's like Marmite, but for me personally, I think that he's incredibly talented guy, really talented. So, and on a personal level, I always got on really well with Jeremy, So I'd like to say that, when we're working together, we'd definitely say we were mates. I mean, I haven't seen him for years, but Jeremy's, he's a special individual. He really is.
Very fairly put.
Cheers, Jim. Dave Cox, you got a question for Perry?
So, do you feel if you entered into the BTCC, would you struggle, or do you think you'd be in the mix or with any of the drivers? What do you think you'd do?
What taking me when I was quick rather than maybe now, but been out the cockpit for a while?
In your prime?
I honestly don't know. I think that if I wanted to do it, and that'd be the really important thing, then I think it probably would have had to have been rear-wheel drive, because I'm not sure. I've seen some people that I rate very highly as racing drivers, and some of them, even in their prime, have struggled a bit with this front-wheel drive thing. And I just have this feeling that I may have been one of them to struggle with it. I really do. I mean, I had, in 2019, I made a bit of a comeback in the European Rallycross Championship, the Titans RX stuff. And I loved that, absolutely adored it. But again, a very different style of driving with four-wheel drive, on when you have to accelerate, but not on opposite lock, you turn even further into the corner. And there were some things that mentally you had to go, force yourself to do it. And then gradually I started getting it and getting into the rhythm, and that was great. But with touring cars, I mean, these guys are, they know what they're doing. They're terribly good, and they're great at front wheel drive. If I took them, if I got in, let's say, a Group C now, even at my age, I suspect I'd be fairly quick, because it's still in me. Not an F1, by the way, not an F1 car. I'd be slow as a dog in an F1 car, because those things are unimaginably fast, and my brain box isn't built to keep up with those speeds anymore. But maybe a Group C, I could think, I could probably just stay ahead of this, or maybe eyesight might let me down a bit. I don't know, but I really wouldn't have the confidence about going against, Jason or Matt or any of the other front players in the front wheel drive stuff. And, you see how good Colin and Andrew are with the Beamers, and, they're brilliant drivers with the rear wheel drive cars. So, there'd be no walkover if I got in. Yeah. Would I be competitive? Probably no, is the answer. I'm probably more comfortable in the background I've had. So that would probably be the easiest answer. Everything else would take a hell of a lot of work, and maybe I'm not good enough to be able to do it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yes, Dave. You were quite close to having a couple of drives in BTCC, weren't you?
Yeah, I had a chat with Tim Jackson at Renault, but that was just around the time I was still really in F1 and trying desperately to find a way to keep the F1 dream alive. And, I probably come to that party a little bit too late, to be quite frank, because, Tim, Harvey, and Alan Menu, and my, great mate, Paul Radicic, Tim's an old pal as well, but, Anthony Reid, that they had all seen it coming and they'd got great drives and they concentrated on that, So, and they're all formidable drivers, but I missed the party a bit there. But there was one with Vic Lee in the BMW where Vic was very keen that I drove for him. That's who Tim Harvey drove for. And we were pretty much going to do it. But then Vic had to go away for a little while. I think it was 7 years by the courts, actually. But so that... So I wasn't prepared to wait. We did correspond a bit, but it wasn't the same as driving.
Possibly a lucky near miss, that one.
Yeah.
One last question from me. I think we've just about had everyone's questions through, and it was one of the quick questions that we didn't get to ask. If you could choose, looking back on your career, would you choose to be on the top of the podium at Le Mans or to have qualified for an F1 race?
Top of the podium at Le Mans. Yeah, because you're talking about to qualify for one F1 race. Yeah, I mean, if I'm going to be pessimistic about that, you could qualify for one F1 race and then be out on the first or second lap.
Yeah.
And then you just join, I mean, one of the brilliant things about my Formula One career is that we weren't just bad, we were notoriously bad. So there's a pleasure in being the top of bad, We weren't mediocre. If we had had much more money and a more professional team, perhaps we could have risen to becoming mediocre. But we were, but that's mediocre. We were king of bad. And that is something that is to be proud of forever, So, it's like, don't disrespect our achievements here, Tony. Yeah.
Talking of bad, we have a little bit of a tradition going now on every episode where we pretty much leave the last question to Rob Marsh. Sometimes he asks a good question, sometimes we have to mute him. And I'm hoping he's actually going to be around to actually ask the final question tonight. Are you there, Rob?
As far as I know, don't look like I am.
You are now.
Oh, I am here. No real question. I've heard something said a couple of times over the course of this chat, so I thought I'd download something. Has anyone heard of this?
Top notch.
£3.88 on the Kindle store.
What time did you join this conversation, Rob?
Pardon?
What time did you join this conversation?
I was here first thing. I kept my video off at first, though, because I didn't want anyone to see my face, because it is unfortunate. But yeah, I've heard it 70 or 80 times, maybe 100. So I thought I might as well indulge in it. And £3.88 is not £3.90. So I've made at least the 2 pence.
Rob, on that. Your time is impeccable, mate. Thank you very much indeed for coming on and just selling it right at the end there.
Hey, look.
And he's muted. Thanks so much for your time, Perry. That's been awesome. Just finally tonight, whilst Rob goes into meltdown, we always try to feature some useful resources as well as fantastic books to explore things when maybe things aren't going quite so well with your mental health. And tonight's top tips around exercise and its important role in maintaining our mental and our physical health. And now the days are getting a little bit longer and the sun's coming out and there's a bit of warmth out there. It's really important that we get ourselves outside because being out in daylight, we make our natural vitamin D, which is really important to both our mental health and our physical health. And we talk about exercise. You don't have to go out there and suddenly be an Olympian. We're not talking about running. Just going out for a brisk walk and every day maybe just trying to walk a little bit further will help your mental health and you will start to feel better. So that's my top tip for this week, but I'll leave it to Jack to wrap the show up.
Thanks, Tony. Hope everyone's enjoyed the show. It's been really nice to step in and do the Paul O'Neill role. Hopefully a little bit different than he would do it, because we all know there's no replacement for Paul O'Neill. He's a one and only. But huge thanks to Perry. If you do want to buy Perry's book, I've put a link in the chat to the Kindle on Amazon where you can download it. So Perry, that one's for free. You don't have to pay me anything for that. I'll just let you have that one. But yeah, thanks everyone tonight for the contributions. If you've enjoyed it, help spread the word and get your mates along onto our Facebook page, and to subscribe to the YouTube channel as well, where you can catch tonight's show again. So remember to keep an eye out for an announcement about next week's star guest, and we'll see you again next Wednesday, same time, same place.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks, Tony. And thank you very much to everybody.
Thanks,
All
everyone.
the best. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.